Novel, Beyond the Silent Door, Episode 1. It was about 12:30 at night. Arnab was walking alone along the road by the old river at the edge of the city. As bustling as this city was during the day, it was equally desolate at night. A few streetlights flickered in the distance, but the light seemed to grow weary before it could even touch the ground. On one side of the road lay the river, on the other, a row of ancient houses, some occupied, some vacant, and some that looked as if they had long ago given up waiting for human life. Arnab didn't usually venture out this late, but tonight, after waking from sleep, he felt as though he couldn't stay inside the house. A void had been festering inside his chest for a long time. It had been nearly a year since Meera was gone. The word "gone" still didn't quite make sense to him. How do people simply become gone when they die? A voice, a gait, a habit, an outburst of anger, a smile. Can everything truly turn into nothingness in a single day? Arnab had changed after Meera's death. He used to teach Bengali literature at the university. His students would say that Professor Arnab made stories come alive in class. Now, he goes to class, writes on the board, discusses a few points, and leaves abruptly. His colleagues noticed he wasn't the same. He spoke less, the dark circles under his eyes had deepened, and most strangely, he often seemed to hear someone's voice. Several times he had stopped mid-sentence to look behind him, as if someone had called his name. Tonight, too, as he walked, he felt as if someone was following him. He looked back. There was no one. Yet an eerie sensation lingered, as if his loneliness wasn't entirely alone. He stopped at the end of the road. An old house stood there, one he had never noticed before, despite having traveled this path many times. The house wasn't particularly large, but it was unnervingly silent. The iron gate was slightly ajar. Inside was a small courtyard strewn with dry leaves. The second-floor windows were fitted with dark tinted glass. Above the main door a plaque read, "Nishit Nivas, the abode of night." Arnab frowned. Was this house here before? He tried to recall. No, at least he didn't remember it. As he pushed the gate and stepped inside, a cold gust of wind struck him. There was no breeze in the surrounding area, yet inside the premises it felt as if someone's breath was trapped. He stood still for a moment. Then he slowly approached the main door. It was closed but not latched. As his hand touched the wood, it creaked open. The interior was pitch black. Only in the distance was a faint, flickering yellow light. "Is anyone there?" Arnab called. There was no answer. Then a woman's voice was heard. "I knew you would come." Arnab's heart skipped a beat. The voice wasn't very clear, yet it was hauntingly familiar. "Who is it?" he asked. An old woman emerged into the light. She appeared to be 70 or 75. Dressed in a white sari with stark white hair, her eyes were unnervingly sharp. She was sitting in a wooden chair, looking as if she had been waiting for a long time. "Don't be afraid," the old woman said. "The time to be afraid hasn't come yet." Arnab stood silent. At this moment, the logical thing would be to turn back, but he didn't. Looking into the old woman's eyes, he felt that his arrival at this house wasn't an accident. It was as if someone had summoned him here. "Do you know me?" he asked. The old woman smiled faintly. "It is you who doesn't know yourself, Arnab." Arnab froze. "My name? Arnab Sen, age 34, a teacher by profession. Your wife Meera died in an accident a year and a half ago, or at least that's what you believe. And for the past 11 months, every Thursday night, you see the same door in your dreams." Arnab's throat went dry. He had told no one about those dreams, no one. In the dream, he always saw a black door. There were no markings on it, but he knew the door was significant. Someone was on the other side, someone calling out to him. Each time he would get very close to the door, but he would wake up before he could open it. And after waking, his heart would race, his hands would tremble, and he'd feel like he was just about to remember something, but couldn't. "Who are you?" His voice sounded parched. The old woman said, "I don't bother with names, but if you must, you can call me Ela." "How do you know all this?" "Because I see." "What do you see?" "What people don't want to see." Her words were strange, but there was no drama in her tone, as if she were stating the most mundane facts. This made it even more terrifying. Looking around the room, Arnab noticed there wasn't much furniture: a wooden table, an old cupboard, a few bookshelves, and a wall clock. The clock wasn't ticking. The time was frozen at 8:07. "Did you call me here?" Arnab asked. "Not I. Memory called you." "Memory?" "A memory that isn't yours, yet is kept within you." Arnab began to feel irritated. "Look, I didn't come here to solve riddles. If you have something to say, say it plainly." The old woman stared at him for a long time. Then she said, "The way your wife died, it isn't what you think it is." The room suddenly became even silenter. Arnab's hands instinctively clenched into fists. "What are you trying to say?" "An accident isn't always an accident." "Are you implying someone killed?" "I'm not implying anything," Ela cut him off. "I'm only saying that what isn't in your mind lies right beside the truth." Arnab grew truly restless. He couldn't clearly remember the night of Meera's death. What he did remember is that it was raining heavily. They had argued. Then Meera left. Around 1:30 a.m., the call came. The car had plummeted into a ravine. The police said the road was wet. She lost control of the brakes. Case closed. It all made sense, yet there was always a gap. That 1 hour, from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., was like a fog to Arnab. The doctors said that due to trauma, the brain often blurs certain memories to protect itself. "What do you want?" he asked. Ela slowly stood up. Despite her age, her movements weren't frail. She went to the cupboard and pulled out a small wooden box. It was black, with silver engravings. She handed it to Arnab. "Take this." "What is it?" "The thing that opens the door." "Which door?" "The one you see repeatedly in your dreams." Arnab took the box. It was quite heavy. There was no lock. Upon opening it, he found an old key inside. Long, black metal with a strange design at the head. As he touched the key, a shiver ran through his entire body. A scene flashed before his eyes for a split second. Rain, a road, Meera's voice. "You didn't tell me the truth, Arnab." Then, total darkness. Arnab stumbled and almost fell. Ela placed a hand on his shoulder. "It has begun," she said. "What is this?" Arnab panted. I saw something." When the door of memory is closed, a person thinks they are safe. But the older a closed door gets, the more the things behind it begin to rot. "I don't understand anything." "You will," Ela said. "Not today, not tomorrow, but very soon." "Why won't you tell me directly?" "Because a truth told is not the same as a truth remembered." Arnab was trembling with rage, fear, and confusion. "Why should I believe you?" Ela remained silent for a while. Then she said, "Because tonight you will see the dream again, and this time the door will open." Arnab returned home that night. It was nearly 3 a.m. He tried to convince himself it was all a bizarre coincidence. Perhaps the old woman had researched him, or maybe it was a psychological game. but the key was sitting right there on the table, and looking at it made him feel as if the room's temperature had dropped. The flat was small but neat. It once bore the marks of 2 people. It still did. Meera's books on plants on the bookshelf, the cups she bought in the kitchen, the dried-up pots on the balcony. When Meera was alive, there was light in this house. Not just electric light, a kind of presence. Now, everything was in its place, but the house felt hollow. Arnab lay down in bed. Sleep didn't take long to arrive. And then, the dream. He was standing in front of that black door. Darkness surrounded him, but the door was vivid. Fog drifted from under the door. The sound of water in the distance. The sound of footsteps. And this time, the key was in his hand. Even within the dream, he knew this time he wouldn't wake up like before. Slowly, he inserted the key into the lock. There had been no lock before, but today there was. As he turned the key, a deep sound resonated, as if ancient iron chains were moving. The door opened. On the other side was a long corridor. Pictures hung on both sides of the walls. Every frame held a photo, but the faces were blurred. At the end of the corridor stood Meera. White clothes, wet hair. She looked exactly as she did the night she died. No sound came out of Arnab's throat. Meera stared at him. There was no softness in her eyes, but no hatred either, only a kind of hardened agony. She said slowly, "You didn't want to remember." Arnab tried to move forward. "Meera!" "No," she said, "not yet." Are you alive?" Meera smiled faintly. That smile chilled Arnab to the bone. Those whose truths are buried never fully die. The frames on the corridor walls began to clear, one by one. In one, Arnab and Meera, laughing. In one, they were arguing. In one, Arnab was talking to someone on the phone. In one, Meera was crying. In one, a small blue shoe of a child. Arnab froze. A piercing pain erupted in his head. He recognized that blue shoe. From where? Meera said, "Your mistake wasn't just losing me. I can't remember anything, because you decided to forget." "I didn't forget anything on purpose." Meera moved closer. Water was pooling at her feet. Arnab noticed the entire corridor was slowly getting drenched. River water? Rainwater? Or something else? "Everything didn't start that night," Meera said. "It started even before that, when you told the first lie." "What lie?" Meera looked at him. "That we would both survive." Then, suddenly, all the lights went out. The sound of a child crying echoed from afar, and Arnab bolted upright in bed. His heart was pounding, his body was drenched in sweat. The room was dark, with only the street lights filtering through the window. The key on the table was glowing strangely. He realized he was clutching something in his right hand. He opened his palm, a small blue button, a button from a child's garment. Arnab's head began to swim. This couldn't have come from a dream. Then where did it come from? He slowly got out of bed. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old file. He had kept all the documents together after Meera's death. Police reports, hospital receipts, photos of the car, the post-mortem report. He hadn't opened it in a long time. With trembling hands, he began to flip through the pages. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on something. On the second page of the police report, there was a handwritten note, one he had never noticed before, or perhaps had never given importance to. Passenger side rear seat contained traces of child-use fabric accessory, identity unconfirmed. Arnab's body went cold. Traces of child-use fabric? But Meera was alone in the car that day. Then, suddenly, there were 3 sharp knocks at the door. The time was 4:12 a.m. Arnab stood perfectly still. The knocks came again,
louder this time. He slowly approached the door and asked, "Who is it?" A woman's voice drifted in from the outside. "Open the door, Arnab. Now it's my turn." The voice didn't belong to Ela, and hearing it, Arnab realized he knew this voice. He knew it very well.